Hey there everybody, Tender Toe here. I wanted to show a quick method for attaching a traditional or a rectangular gathered end style type of underquilt to a bridge hammock. In this case I have a 20-degree hammock gear incubator underquilt, and I have the Warbonnet Ridgerunner bridge hammock. Now, I know that there's plenty of manufacturers out there that are making bridge hammock specific underquilts, which is useful. You're saving weight because it cuts, insulation where you don't necessarily need it around the corners of the hammock and such. But this is a particularly useful method for if you already, for example, in my case, I already had gathered end or traditional type underquilts for my previous gathered end hammocks. My wife also still uses a gathered end hammock, and I now use a bridge hammock. So it's nice to be able to have a single set of quilts that we can interchange between the two hammocks and so forth. So it's nice to be able to have a method for attaching an underquilt that's not necessarily made for a bridge hammock to a bridge hammock in this case. So let's take a look. What we have here is the attachment points on the hammock itself are going to be the webbing portion that attaches to the metal spreader bar buckle here, and there's a small loop in the webbing, and that's what we're going to attach the underquilt to. And on the actual underquilt, the way that we're going to attach the underquilt to the hammock here is on the corners of the underquilt itself. Here's the traditional suspension for the underquilt. You'd usually wrap this around your whipping on your gathered end hammock, and the way that shot cord attaches to the underquilt itself is with a little line lock here, and that line lock is held on with a small little loop of grosgrain, and through that loop of grosgrain you're going to attach a piece of shot cord, just a loop. This is probably, I don't know, 2 inches, 2.5 inches of shot cord through that, attached to that ribbon of that little loop of grosgrain there, and then there's just an S-beaner attached to that. So you don't need to modify the underquilt in any way. You just need to add these additional 4 pieces to it. And that's on 2 of the 4 corners have shot cord like that, and the other 2 corners have a piece of fixed cord. In this case I just have a piece of mason line, and that's probably an inch loop there. I left some excess there that I never ended up needing and never ended up cutting off, but I found that I tried initially with 4 corners all shot cord, and it didn't suck up the underquilt tightly enough to the underside of the hammock. So I decided that to give a try with 2 pieces of mason line or some type of solid cord that doesn't move, and then 2 of the corners have the shot cord on it for some stretch for when the hammock's actually occupied. So you've got a piece of shot cord on that corner, a piece of mason line on this corner, then when we go down to the foot end here, we have a piece of shot cord loop on this side and mason line on this side. So sort of alternating corners with mason line and shot cord. And then all you need to do is you take the S-beaner or whatever kind of attachment, you could even use a mitten hook or whatever you happen to have on hand, and all you need to do is take the S-beaner and clip it through the piece of webbing on the end of the hammock here. Let's take a second to try it then. And the beauty of this is that it allows you to, like I mentioned before, to use quilts for multiple hammocks, and you don't have to necessarily purchase bridge hammock specific underquilts for this. So if we take a look here, all I did was just clip that S-beaner through that webbing loop, and we do that on all 4 sides, and then we will we'll take a look and see what this looks like when it's all set up. So if you take a look, it actually snugs up really nicely up under the hammock. If I plan on pushing the temperature rating of this, which I've done before, gotten down into the teens and such, you can attach a small piece of cord to both sides of this and actually run it up to your tarp ridge line if you need to, but there's really no need when you're operating in the normal temperature range of the underquilt. It snugs up really nice to the bottom of the hammock once you actually get inside of it. And it's just, once again, a great way to use a quilt that you might already own, rectangular or traditional style quilt, with a bridge type hammock. So this is how you'd use a full length and how you'd hook it up to a bridge hammock. I'm going to take a look at a partial length underquilt and show you how that looks. So now what we have here is a Hammock Gear 40-degree Phoenix partial length underquilt. And we need to take a bit of a different approach because obviously this is a partial length underquilt. You can't attach all four corners of the underquilt to the four corners of the hammock because it's obviously only a partial length underquilt. So the way that we get around that is, so the actual suspension that runs through the side channels of the underquilt, and usually it makes a big loop like this, and you take the loop and attach it around the whipping of your gathered in hammock. What we do here is we add 4 loops of cordage that are prussicked onto the suspension of the underquilt here. And what we can do with this is we can actually adjust how snug the underquilt actually hangs under the hammock itself by having these 4, if you can take a look, there's 4 of those prussicks that are on all 4 corners. So let's take a look at what it actually looks like. We can turn it over here, and you can see that sort of the indentation here. You can obviously move up or down the underquilt where it actually rests, and you can see you obviously are going to need a foot pad there, just like you would in any gathered end hammock. Let's actually take a look and see what it looks like when it's got someone inside. So now the nice part about the having the prussics here is you still have the adjustability to be able to slide the hammock, or rather slide the quilt up and down to get it where you want it. And then once you have it where you want it, head to foot wise, you can now take this even from laying down in the hammock, and you can adjust the prussics to either tighten or loosen to either bring the quilt up towards the hammock or further down. So say if you want to vent things are getting a little too hot, which they are now here, you can loosen things up just like that, make it nice and baggy, let some ventilation in, obviously open up the end channel, let some air in, or if you know, you're getting ready to go to bed at night, it's starting to get a little chilly, you snug the end channel up, and then you can take your prussic loops and you can tighten them up and snug the underquilt up closer to the hammock. Now you do it obviously on this side, and then you do it on this side as well, and that would effectively bring the quilt up more snugly to the side of the hammock, keeping things nice and warm. So there you go, a couple of different options for attaching both a partial length underquilt and a full length underquilt, traditional rectangular style gathered end type underquilt, to a bridge hammock, in this case the Warbonnet Ridgerunner bridge hammock. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.